first section of the Expressway, the first rural expressway in New South Wales, was officially opened by the Premier, Mr. Askin, in 1965. Before the motorist could enjoy facilities such as these, many people in various occupations combined their knowledge and skills to plan and execute work of great magnitude. This is the story of those people and the job done by them. Sydney, now one of the world's largest cities, is the centre of commerce in the state of New South Wales, and there has always been a need for a connection between the state capital and Newcastle, the state's second city and big industrial centre 100 miles to the north. Early access between the two cities was by sea. Road connection followed with the Putty Road in 1820. Then a new route by Wiseman's Ferry in 1829. And through St Albans in 1844. George Peate's passenger ferry over the Hawkesbury at Mooney Point enabled a more direct route to be established, also in 1844. Parts of this road, with its impressive stonework, can still be seen. In 1899, a new route from Sydney, which crossed the Hawkesbury River at Wiseman's Ferry, connected with the previous route near Gosford and then followed the coast to Newcastle. This ferry and road served as the principal access between Sydney and Newcastle for many years. On the Peate's Ferry Road, now the Pacific Highway, a shorter route was established. The highway, with its easy grades and best possible pavement of the day, was hailed as a great engineering achievement and was a boon to motorists in the 1930s. The Hawkesbury Bridge replaced Peate's Ferry in 1945. With post-war development and the increased use of motor vehicles, the capacity of this road was soon outstripped. A new high-standard route of 20 miles in length, bypassing Gosford, provided further relief. It became apparent that even with improvements, the existing routes could not be expected to keep pace with impending traffic growth. An expressway was planned to link the two cities and provide a fast road to Gosford and the rapidly developing Central Coast. Initial work was between Hawkesbury River and Calgary. For early surveys, a tellurometer was used to measure distances by reflecting radio waves. Targets were placed on survey points for control of aerial photography. Photographs were obtained by flying over the targeted area, which was extremely rugged. The aerial photographs were scanned in a stereo plotter made available by the Lands Department. In this way, ground details were translated into contour plans. In the Department of Main Roads Drawing Office, the road location was fixed, a task made difficult by the need to accommodate an expressway and a highway on the narrow, steep neck of land north of the Hawkesbury. Steel splines were manipulated on the contour plans and aerial photographs examined to achieve the best alignment. Particular details were investigated by constructing models of corrugated cardboard. The Abbott apparatus, comprising cardboard cross-sections supported on retort stands, also assisted in the design. Detailed drawings were prepared. It was planned to build the expressway north of the Hawkesbury in 3 sections, from Mooney Point to Calgary. In 1963, a contract for the first section, of just over 4 miles between Mooney Point and Mount White, was let to K.D. Morris and Sons. The second section of 1.6 miles near Mount White and the third section to Calga were constructed by the Department of Main Roads. An engineering organisation to control the work was established at Mooney Point. A critical path diagram was used to plan operations in detail. A computer assisted in the analysis. Bar charts were used for job control. It was here at Mooney Point that work on the expressway commenced. The first operation was to clear the area of timber. The width of clearing was kept to a minimum and debris burned within the cleared area. Transverse pipe culverts were constructed prior to commencement of full-scale earthworks on the expressway. Initially, cuttings were excavated to median level. All soft rock was loosened by ripping. The harder rock was drilled for loosening with explosives. It was removed from both sides simultaneously, leaving an island of solid rock in the center of the cutting. Material excavated from cuttings was moved to embankments and placed in layers 8 inches thick. The natural surface was stepped in advance of each layer. Rock facings 4 feet thick were provided on the sides of the embankments. Earthworks were carefully controlled using survey instruments. About 50% of the rock was loosened by ripping, using the heaviest tractors available, up to 425 horsepower. These tractors were fitted with rear-mounted hydraulic rippers using a single tine. Material loosened by ripper was moved by motorized scraper. These units were capable of carrying up to 30 cubic yards of material at 30 miles an hour. A typical team consisted of 5 scrapers with a tractor dozer push loading and 1 or 2 ripping tractors. With this equipment, outputs of up to 10,000 cubic yards of earthwork per day were achieved. Material was discharged from scrapers on the run and spread out in thin layers. The layers were then rolled. Aboriginal rock engravings encountered during construction were cleaned with an air jet and carefully recorded. Some engravings were cut out and removed for preservation. Rock, which could not be economically ripped, was loosened by drilling and blasting. Track-mounted drills bored 2.5-inch diameter holes to receive explosives. The explosive used was generally an ammonium nitrate fuel oil mixture prepared in batches near the site. The main charge was primed with gelignite, connected by instantaneous detonating fuse to electric millisecond delay detonators. To avoid misfires, detonator circuits were tested by measuring their electrical resistance. The shots were then fired. The series of delays introduced into each blast resulted in good fragmentation. Initially, mechanical shovels were used for loading rock which was too large for moving by scraper. Later, front-end loaders of 2 to 4 cubic yards capacity were found more suitable. Large trucks carried the rock to the fills. Tractors fitted with rock rakes were used to separate the larger rocks. These were moved to the outer edge to form a rock facing about 4 feet thick on the fill slopes. This process provided a scour-resistant surface. The finer material remaining in the body of the fill was spread by bulldozer and watered to bring it to optimum moisture content. At this stage of the operation, sheep's foot rollers compacted the material to its maximum density to prevent later settlement. Rock cuttings were cleaned down with crowbars and compressed air to dislodge any loose material. The top of the subbase was carefully checked for level and shape. A grader trimmed the surface of this layer to preset levels. The subbase was compacted with grid rollers. Steel vibrating rollers were also used. Earthwork was now well advanced throughout the whole length between Hawkesbury River and Mount White. To keep water clear of the expressway, drainage structures were provided. Catch drains were constructed along the tops of cuttings to lead water into natural watercourses. On steep grades, these were lined with concrete to prevent scouring. Median drains were constructed to collect surface water. Curbing and guttering were provided to collect water in cuttings. An extrusion machine was used to construct concrete curbs through cuttings. Subsoil drains were provided under the outer edge of the pavement to intercept subsurface water. They consisted of earthenware pipes laid with pervious joints in trenches. To carry water down embankment slopes, precast concrete drainage units were installed. Between Mooney Point and Mount White, 4 bridges were constructed. The first at Mooney Interchange. The second at Joel's Lookout to carry the expressway over a saddle in the narrow ridge. The third at Mount White, where the expressway crosses the Pacific Highway. And the fourth at Mount White interchange. The bridge at Mooney Point is a pre-stressed concrete structure. At Joel's Lookout, twin bridges, each of 7 spans, were constructed. At South Mount White, twin bridges crossing the existing highway were built whilst traffic was kept flowing beneath. At Mount White interchange, a 2-span reinforced concrete bridge was constructed. By mid-1965, from Hawkesbury River to Mount White, the expressway was taking shape. The difficulty of establishing an expressway through this rugged terrain is here evident. Before constructing the pavement, the foundation was trimmed to the correct shape. The sub-base of selected sandstone, 12 inches thick, was then placed, followed by a base course layer of crushed basalt, 8 inches thick. An asphaltic concrete intermediate course, 2 1/4 inches thick, was then spread. The 10-foot wide shoulders, or breakdown lanes, were surfaced with a sprayed bituminous seal, using a 3/4 inch cover aggregate to give a coarse textured surface, contrasting in appearance and tyre noise with the travelling lanes, which were surfaced with asphaltic concrete 3/4 of an inch thick. The base course layer of crushed basalt was spread mechanically. After being watered, the base course was compacted by vibrating rollers. Surface levels were checked, and final surface trimming was carried out by grader with further compaction by pneumatic tired rollers. A 10-foot straight edge was used to check the surface accuracy. A bituminous emulsion tack coat was sprayed on the surface before the intermediate course of asphaltic concrete was applied, using a mechanical paver. Initial compaction was by steel roller and secondary compaction by pneumatic tired roller. Tracks were laid to take an extrusion machine, which was used to place an asphaltic concrete curb on the outer edge of the intermediate course. Topsoil was spread as part of roadside landscaping. Grass seed was planted. Fertilizer spread, and the area watered. The ground surface was sealed with bitumen emulsion to prevent scour and to assist germination. Grass was quickly established. Grass sods protected earth drains, while steep slopes were planted with indigenous ground cover. Native trees and shrubs were planted to enhance roadside appearance. Outside edges of the travelling lanes were masked for protection before spraying bitumen on the shoulders. aggregate was applied directly to the bitumen to give a cover of 1 stone thickness, and then rolled by pneumatic-tired multi-wheeled roller. Travelling lanes were then surfaced with asphaltic concrete. A profilometer checked the accuracy of the final surface. The completion of the road pavement coincided with the finishing of the bridges at Mooney, Joel's Lookout, South Mount White, and Mount White Interchange. The expressway between Hawkesbury River and Mount White was open to traffic in December 1965. The new length used an interchange at Mount White to connect with the existing highway. Earthworks then proceeded at an accelerated rate between Mount White and Calgary. Between Mount White and Calgary, 3 bridges were constructed. The first, the stub bridge, is a post-tensioned concrete box girder structure. The second bridge was constructed using post-tensioned concrete girders. It has a long central span across the full width of the expressway. The bridge at Calgary is a steel girder structure. Easily read road signs with large lettering were needed for the high-speed traffic. At interchanges, where overhead lighting was to be provided, signs were illuminated by fluorescent tubes. Toll collecting facilities were provided at Mooney Interchange using prefabricated cabin units. Telephones at 3/4-mile intervals were connected to the administrative centre, from where an emergency patrol wagon operates in the event of a breakdown or accident. Special lanes were provided for slow vehicles, both on ascents and descents of steep grades. At the bottom of the long descent to Mooney Point, a safety ramp was constructed to stop vehicles out of control. These safety features were built into the expressway. Lines were spray painted on the road surface to define travelling lanes in preparation for the opening of the full length of the expressway between the Hawkesbury River and Calgary. In 1966, 3 years after its commencement, the first 10 miles of rural expressway in New South Wales was brought to completion. Motorists using this expressway are able to enjoy the comfort and convenience of fast travel under safe driving conditions. The Department of Main Roads takes pride in the achievement of surmounting the great difficulties associated with the construction of an expressway of world standard through such rugged terrain, and is constructing other expressways to this standard in New South Wales for the benefit of the travelling public and indeed the whole community. Asphaltic concrete 3/4 of an inch thick. The base course layer of crushed basalt was spread mechanically. After being watered, the base course was compacted by vibrating rollers. Surface levels were checked and final surface trimming was carried out by grader with further compaction by pneumatic tired rollers. A 10-foot straight edge was used to check the surface accuracy. A bituminous emulsion tack coat was sprayed on the surface before the intermediate course of asphaltic concrete was applied using a mechanical paver. Initial compaction was by steel roller and secondary compaction by pneumatic tired roller. Tracks were laid to take an extrusion machine, which was used to place an asphaltic concrete curb on the outer edge of the intermediate course. Topsoil was spread as part of roadside landscaping. Grass seed was planted. Fertilizer spread. And the area watered. The ground surface was sealed with bitumen emulsion to prevent scour and to assist germination. Grass was quickly established. Grass sods protected earth drains, while steep slopes were planted with indigenous ground cover. Native trees and shrubs were planted to enhance roadside appearance. Outside edges of the travelling lanes were masked for protection before spraying bitumen on the shoulders. Aggregate was applied directly to the bitumen to give a cover of 1 stone thickness. And then rolled by pneumatic tired multi-wheeled roller. Travelling lanes were then surfaced with asphaltic concrete. A profilometer checked the accuracy of the final surface. The completion of the road pavement coincided with the finishing of the bridges at Mooney, Joel's Lookout, South Mount White, and Mount White Interchange. The expressway between Hawkesbury River and Mount White was open to traffic in December 1965. The new length used an interchange at Mount White to connect with the existing highway. Earthworks then proceeded at an accelerated rate between Mount White and Calgary. Between Mount White and Calgary, 3 bridges were constructed. The first, the stub bridge, is a post-tensioned concrete box girder structure. The second bridge was constructed using post-tension concrete girders. It has a long central span across the full width of the expressway. The bridge at Calgary is a steel girder structure. Easily read road signs with large lettering were needed for the high-speed traffic. At interchanges, where overhead lighting was to be provided, signs were illuminated by fluorescent tubes. Toll collecting facilities were provided at Mooney Interchange using prefabricated cabin units. Telephones at 3/4-mile intervals were connected to the administrative centre, from where an emergency patrol wagon operates in the event of a breakdown or accident. Special lanes were provided for slow vehicles, both on ascents and descents of steep grades. At the bottom of the long descent to Mooney Point, a safety ramp was constructed to stop vehicles out of control. These safety features were built into the expressway. Lines were spray painted on the road surface to define travelling lanes in preparation for the opening of the full length of the expressway between the Hawkesbury River and Calga. In 1966, 3 years after its commencement, the first 10 miles of rural expressway in New South Wales was brought to completion. Motorists using this expressway are able to enjoy the comfort and convenience of fast travel under safe driving conditions. The Department of Main Roads takes pride in the achievement of surmounting the great difficulties associated with the construction of an expressway of world standard through such rugged terrain, and is constructing other expressways to this standard in New South Wales for the benefit of the travelling public and indeed the whole community.